Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about color correction, right? If we made a mistake during the shoot or if the colors are not properly balanced, maybe our white balance was off a little bit. And so this is our opportunity for us to correct those colors, make sure everything is the way it should be. And that is unique in itself. And I want to show you how we want to do that because I don't want you to rely on your eyeballs. Okay, I want you to rely on the scopes. You need to learn how to read scopes in order for you to know exactly if the colors are in range. So let's take this clip for example, and when you first look at it, it looks pretty good. The colors are pretty balanced, but again, I don't want us to just use our eyeballs to determine what's going on in the picture. We really need to look at a scope. And so down here, I normally keep my scope, and right now I've got my waveform monitor, and on this little tool right here, you can set which scope you want to look at, and right now it's set to waveform luma. And the way you read this is the vertical axes, and you'll see here -20 all the way to 120 is IREs. And IREs, we talk in percentage. So we talk about 0% IRE, 10% IRE, 20% IRE. And that indicate the brightness of the light that's being displayed. And on the horizontal axes, from left to right is actually the picture that we have. And so that's really helpful because then we can really identify on which part of the picture those dots correspond to, what they correspond to. So sometimes I like to actually make that scope just about the same size as my monitor. And now I know exactly like those three dots are somewhere in this area of the screen, and I'm guessing it's somewhere here. Again, horizontal is left to right the picture, and vertical -20 to 120 IRE, that's the brightness, the intensity of the light, okay? So how do we read this? Or what's the norm here? So what I want to do is, I already have a black video, and so I'm going to drag this to the timeline, and then we're going to measure that. So I'm going to just click my playhead here, and you'll see that now at a pure black, we're measuring 0 IRE. Okay, which would make sense, right? If IRE measure the brightness, 0 IRE would be pure black. And so let's see what it does on pure white. So I'm going to right click here, I'm going to put new item, color matte, and I'm going to say okay, I'm going to pick pure white, and I'm going to drag it to the timeline. And so what do you think it's going to do? So we had 0 IRE on black, and when we go to pure white, it goes to 100% IRE. So now we know 100% IRE is our pure white. And so that's going to be kind of like our reference as far as figure out our shadows and our midtones and our highlights. So again, going back to this shot, my highlights are actually really low, right? So if pure white is 100, I'm nowhere near that, right? So like some of the stuff are peaking at about 75 IRE. You see this little dot, and I'm guessing it's like probably this roof right here. But for the most part, I'm right around the 60 IRE. So I'm not close to that. I'm not close to where I need to be. And then my shadows, which would be like the black cars right here and the road, some of them is at zero right here. And I'm actually thinking it's this part of the picture right here. It's that shadow under the roof line right here. But we're still pretty high as far as my shadows. Now, I typically don't work with this scope, so I want you to go to this little setting here, and we're going to take the Parade RGB scope, and I'm actually going to turn the other one off. So it's actually the exact same scope, but multiplied by 3. So we have one scope here for the reds, one scope here for the green, one scope here for the blues. And it reads the same way. IREs on the vertical, picture on the horizontal is just repeated 3 times, but now it displays the balance with the colors. So at first glance here, we can see that we have a lot more blue in this picture than green and red, especially in the highlights, which would make somewhat sense, right? Because it's that sky up here that's creating all that extra blue. But we know that pure white, like those cars, should be at 100 IRE. And here, let's look at our reference. So let me put the playhead back on the pure white. And now you can see that red, green, and blue are all 3 at 100% in order to create pure white. And so in order to correct color, I need to understand that, right? So like those cars right here and that building right here should be close to 100% IRE on all 3 of those colors, and we're not there. And so we can use a tool for that. I use actually different plugins, but today I'll just do it with what comes in with Adobe Premiere. So if you go into the effect and color correction, we're going to take the Lumetri color tool, and you can drag it or double click it into this clip, and you have a bunch of different options, and we're going to go to the color wheel. And so here are color wheels, and what I like about this, it gives you the highlights, midtones, and shadows, and you can manipulate each of those separately, okay? So we know our highlights need to be way up, so we're going to bring those up. And so as I bring those up, you can look at the waveform monitor, okay? And I bring it all the way up, and now we can see that I have some red, some green, and some blue peaking up here, okay? So we're getting pretty close here, okay? Now, if we feel like we still don't have enough green and red, then we can move this towards the red right here, and that's going to lower our blues and raise our red and raise our green a little bit. There we go. Okay, and that's pretty close. So now we know we have a much better reading off of the whites, and now we can work on our shadows. If you look at the bottom, we're 0 IRE on red, we're 0 IRE on green, a little bit on the blue, but not much. So now we can go on this side, and same thing, I can lower those a little bit, make my blacks a little bit more black, which I typically like the parking lot getting a little darker, like the road itself. Okay, and then we can push towards the blues, towards the red, which is the opposite, which is where we want the blues to show up, like somewhere here. I'm actually pushing towards the green a little bit too much now. Let me bring it back a little bit. That's a little much. Now we're getting into the red. Somewhere in here, okay? And my midtones, they're pretty balanced. Like if we look at those dots right here, those dots on the red side are right at the 60 IRE line. Those are below, the green are below, and the blue are below. So we know we need to raise that, and we need to flatten those colors up. And so we're gonna go towards the green a little bit, and maybe green and blue. Let's try to bring those blue up a little bit, right there. Okay, so now we're pretty balanced. If you look at those dots again, we're about 55, 55, 55, and 55. So we're pretty good. Now we just need to raise them up. So we're just gonna raise them, raise them, raise them. So now we're at 60, somewhere in there. 65 IRE is pretty good. And so that's it. So now we look at our picture, and with our eyeballs, we're like, yeah, that looks pretty good. But if we look at our scope, we know we have a really well-balanced shot. Those are color corrected. This is actually what those colors should look like. So that was a pretty quick and easy way to do color correction. Now, I'm not a colorist. That's a very technical and very specialty jobs, and I don't pretend to have that expertise. But as long as you understand scope and you understand IRE, you should be able to quickly, easily color correct your shot and make them look a lot better. And I can't wait to see what you do with it. So play with it, use those tools, and then show us the results. We would appreciate it.